Hello and welcome to this first of two videos teaching you how to get a pawn to the end, or how to stop your opponent's pawn. In the first video we will learn about passed pawns, pawn races, and whether a king can catch a pawn. In the second video you can learn what happens when there is just one pawn left. First, let's learn about passed pawns. What is a passed pawn? Let's put some pieces on the board. In this position, white has 3 pawns and black has 2 pawns. A passed pawn is a pawn that has no enemy pawn ahead of it, either on the same file or the next file. In other words, no enemy pawn can stop the pawn getting to the end of the board. Let's look at each pawn. Is this a passed pawn? There aren't any black pawns ahead of the white pawn, either on the same file or the next file, so this is a passed pawn. OK, how about this white pawn on C2? The B and C files are clear, but the D file is blocked by a black pawn, so the white pawn on C2 is not a passed pawn. What about this black pawn on D5? The D and E files are clear, but the C file is blocked by a white pawn, so the black pawn on D5 is not a passed pawn. What about the white pawn on G6? There is a black pawn on the next file. What do you think? Well, the black pawn on the H file can't stop the white pawn getting to the end of the board. The white pawn is passed. Finally, what about this black pawn on H6? Is this a passed pawn? Well, the white pawn on G6 can't stop it, but the white king is blocking it. Does this mean the pawn is not passed? No. We only need to check whether pawns can stop it. There are no pawns in the way, so the black pawn on H6 is a passed pawn. So these are the passed pawns. Towards the end of a game, a passed pawn can be a big advantage, but you need to know how to get it to the end. In this position, it is white to move. How can white win? Let's draw a square on the board so we can see how white can win. How have I drawn the square? Well, this square goes from the pawn to the end of the board, and towards the black king. Remember, it's a square, so the sides have to be the same number of squares. In this case, 3 squares. The black king is outside the square, so it won't be able to catch the pawn. White can win by advancing the pawn. Oh, before I forget, you don't actually draw the square on the board. The last thing we want is chessboards covered in queening squares. The pawn has moved nearer to the end of the board, so the queening square gets smaller, so the black king cannot move into the queening square. Black cannot catch the pawn. And so white can move the pawn to the end of the board and promote it to a queen. And white should win this game. But let's go back and see if the result is any different if it is black to move. There's the queening square, and the black king can enter the queening square. And so the black king will be able to catch the white pawn. The pawn moves forward and the queening square shrinks. So to stop the pawn, the black king must enter the queening square again. White can get the pawn to the end, but the black king is ready and waiting to take the queen. But what about white's other passed pawn? Let's draw the queening square. Now let's draw the other side towards the black king, and let's complete the rest of the square. There we go. Each side is 6 squares, and if it were black's move, then the black king could move into the queening square, but it is white to move. As the white pawn advances, the queening square gets smaller. The black king just isn't quite close enough. It hasn't been able to enter the queening square. and now white should win. Well, as long as they've watched my video on how to checkmate with a king and queen, and even if they haven't watched that video, they should be able to use the extra queen to get the c-pawn to the end of the board. So we've learnt about the queening square, so you can work out whether or not a king can catch a pawn. You also need to learn about pawn races. White to move. Who wins? Neither king can catch the enemy pawn, so it's going to be a pawn race. White's pawn won the race. Black's pawn just didn't make it in time. And now white's job is to use the queen to capture the black pawn. White forks black's king and pawn. Job done. The black king moves out of check, and white captures the pawn. Let's go back and see what difference it would have made if black had been able to move first. Off we go. This time black made it in time. Both sides have a queen, so what should the result be? Did you guess draw? Sometimes when both players promote pawns at the same time, the game is a draw, but this time there is a sting in the tail. Can you spot it? Black must move the king onto the g-file to escape check. And this is not a good place for the black king to be. It's a skewer. The black king has to move out of the way, and black's new queen is gone. It's not hard to count the squares to see if your pawn can get to the end in time, but you also need to work out what the queens will do next. In the next example, the player whose pawn wins the race loses. In this position, it is white to move. Both pawns have 2 squares to go, so the white pawn will get to the end of the board first. The white pawn has won the race. But the new black queen has skewered the white king and new queen, and when the white king moves out of check, the white queen is lost. OK, we know passed pawns can be good. We know how to work out if kings can catch them. And we know to be careful to work out what happens at the end of pawn races. Let's now look at some more examples. In this position, white has 2 passed pawns on next door files. They're called connected passed pawns. The white king is miles away, so can the black king take the white pawns? The pawn on c3 defends the pawn on d4, but the pawn on c3 is undefended. Should the black king take it? Only 1 pawn left, but the black king can't catch it. So black shouldn't have taken the pawn. In fact, in this position, black can do nothing, and white can leave the pawns where they are, and bring the king closer to help get the pawns to the end. This is another position where the black king can't take the pawns, and white can bring the king closer to help. Black can't move the king to the highlighted squares, because of the pawns. And if black moves the king forward and takes the b-pawn, the d-pawn will get to the end of the board. So let's watch what happens if black tries to move the king round to take the d-pawn. Now the black king can't take the d pawn. If it does, the b pawn will get to the end. But if black moves the king backwards and forwards on these two highlighted squares, then white must leave the pawns where they are and bring the king in to help. The final example you should know is when the pawns are 4 or more files apart. If the black king moves towards one pawn, white moves the other pawn, and black has to move the king back into the queening square. The king could move here, but then the other white pawn advances, and now both pawns are a square closer to the end of the board. But what if black tries to be clever by moving the king into the queening square in front of the e pawn? What should white do? Move the other pawn again. Black needs to get the king into the queening square. Now white can move the e pawn, because black can't move out of the queening square to take it. And again. White's pawns are marching forwards. Passed pawns can be a big advantage, so if you have extra pawns, you should try to create a passed pawn. White has not created a passed pawn. Let's try again. This time, white has created a passed pawn.